listening to a Brawl Network production. This is a podcast for the best fans in the NFL.
Are you in the Mafia?
Am I in the what?
It's time for a Bills Brawl podcast.
Second down and seven. Kelly with the time. Touchdown! Bill Buck.
Allen. Deep shot. Touchdown! On the line to Stephon Diggs.
And Thurman breaking tackles at the 22. Inside the 10. Touchdown Buffalo.
Mike Lindsley back with you for another episode of the Bills Brawl. Love talking Buffalo Bills football with you, Bills Mafia. I'm on Twitter at Mike L Sports. And of course, you can get us at Network Brawl. Download and subscribe to all of our podcasts. Super, super excited for this episode because here he is. We're going to bring him in. The longtime TV personality in Buffalo. Covered the Buffalo Bills for a long, long time. The Sabres as well. Might squeak in a Sabres question at the end, maybe. But has been as close to it as anybody. Recently retired, enjoying life. One of my favorite people. The former TV personality, sports anchor, reporter, insider of the Buffalo Bills. You know him. You love him. It's Stu Boyar. Remember him? WGRZ-TV. What a career. Stu, welcome aboard. Thank you for coming on, man. Great to catch up.
Thank you, Mike. I'm great. The Bills season was the most fun I've had since I can't remember when, and it's great to be on, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, well, I remember I made a joke to you on Facebook. I said, yeah, all they needed was for you to retire, right? I mean, right? It just goes hand in hand. I guess the first thing I want to kind of lead off with is, at what moment did you say, okay, I think this team's for real?
I have to go back and replay the season throughout my mind, but it was, they started off 4-0, if I remember correctly, and then I just started feeling really good pretty early because I liked what Josh Allen was doing. You could see early on that he had taken some big steps forward, and then I think after they lost two straight to go to 4-2, they lost to Tennessee and Kansas City. It was the way they came back maybe after the Kansas City game. I don't remember who they played. Maybe it was Seattle or somebody. But I just started to think, this team's really pretty good. Yeah. And then the San Francisco game and the games after that, I was like, this team isn't pretty good. It's really, really good. So somewhere in there, I started to think, this kid is playing great quarterback. They're playing really well around him. I would say fairly early inside that 8-game winning streak, I started to think, this team's really good.
For me, it was the Rams game. They were down.
I forgot about that game.
Yeah,
yes, you're right.
Yeah, they were down late. The Bills were up, by a ton. It was 28-3 early in the third quarter. They go down 7 plays. Diggs catches the 4-yarder from Allen, and it's 28-3, and then it's one thing after another. The Rams go down, touchdown, bad fumbles, horrible penalties. Robert Woods catches a pass. All of a sudden, Cooper Kupp gets a touchdown pass. After Kupp goes into the end zone, it's a 3-point game. The Rams get the ball back 32-28, and there were a little bit of the thoughts going in my mind, my friends' minds. We were texting back and forth. We're like, oh no, is this same old Bills? Because those are the 3 words we all want to get rid of, same old Bills. And then 11 plays, 75 yards, 4 minutes and change. Allen hits Tyler Crawford, 35-32 lead, and they end up winning. Moved to 3-0, and I said, yep. That's what I did at that moment.
Well, you're right. I had totally forgotten about that game. But what I really liked is I think Allen threw an interception in that game that really wasn't an interception to Dawson Knox. Is that the game? And then the way they came back. And Josh has always been really good in the fourth quarter. And that was just so impressive. Yeah, they got a break on that penalty call on that last drive that set up the winning touchdown. But there was just something about the way that team carried itself all the way throughout the season that gave you a really good feeling. And if you remember, for years, the Bills didn't win games because of either horrible quarterback play or quarterback play that just simply wasn't good enough. This year they won games because they had outstanding quarterback play.
Right.
So it was the first time in a long time that they've had that. And, defensively, there were concerns, but they got much better as the season went on. They were not good against the run. They didn't run the ball real well, but they had enough other things to overcome all of that stuff. And it started and ended pretty much with the quarterback and, of course, Stephon Diggs, who had a magnificent season. And, obviously he had a great year. And as Josh took the giant leap forward he took, Stephon Diggs was a huge part of that. So I had completely, I was thinking in the 4-0 start, and I hadn't remembered the Rams game. But what I did like was they had the big lead, as you said. And then once they lost it, they came right back and took that game back. And that was impressive.
Yeah, it sure was.
And also, see, I thought when Seattle came here, I thought the Seahawks were really good. And I was like, the Bills whipped this team. So, and the funny thing about this team, Mike, was when bad things or not so good things happen to them, like the Hail Mary pass at the end of the Arizona game, then they reel off 8 straight wins.
Yeah, exactly.
And Arizona goes into the tank.
I know.
You would have expected the exact opposite.
No doubt. It was just such a special season just across the board for so many reasons. Stu Boyar, the longtime TV personality, Buffalo Bills insider reporter for so long. In fact, going back to the Super Bowl years, Stu, there were a lot of people this year, former players, media. I had John Fina on my podcast, fans who started to get the feeling again, like, man, this feels a lot like just the 90s, where every week you felt confident, you felt great, high-powered offense, the quarterback who the town fell in love with. They get to the Final Four in the NFL, and were you one of those people at some point where you started to have visions back? Not that the success is comparable yet, because this Bills era right now with McBean is very early. But did you get a sense anywhere in the season like you kind of felt like you were living like it was 92 or 93 again?
Well, I kind of felt better because I was retired and I just could sit on my couch and watch the games and enjoy them without all the hassles that go into a work day. But the answer to that question is, I just felt great, Mike. It was so good to see. The 90s was fun. What I like is the humbleness of this group. And what I liked about that other group is they weren't really humble. They were kind of cocky, but they were so good. They knew it. And if you watch and listen to Josh Allen, he seems so down to earth. And who doesn't love a guy after being interviewed on network TV? He turns away from the microphone and yells out, "Go Bills." He's embraced the community. The community's embraced him. Different time. This team seems to fit in this time just like the other team fit into that time. So, yeah, there are a lot of comparisons. But while that team had great accomplishments, this team's greatest accomplishments, I think, are still ahead of it. But, yeah, I reflected back on that other team and how much fun they were to watch, because every week in and week out, you knew something special was going to happen because they were that good. And, yes, I thought about that with this team, too, this season, because you saw all kinds of special things, and you saw that quarterback making throws that were just like, how did he do that? Or what a great throw. And everybody thought only Patrick Mahomes could make those kind of throws. Well, I got news for you. Josh Allen can make those kind of throws too, and he did.
In the NFL, you get to the Final Four, the narrative changes a little bit, you exceed some expectations, you win 2 playoff games, you check more boxes, and fan bases, I don't care what fan base it is, Bills to Ravens to Colts to Yankees to Indians, Cleveland baseball team, whatever they're going to be called in the future, to all the other sports, Lakers, and it doesn't matter what sport, what team, what fan base. The immediate thing is, well, they did this now, so next step is this. This is what should happen. This is what we want to happen. The next progression is this. And it ain't that simple. You and I both know that. You hit the reset button, you've got the salary cap, you've got to deal with all the different things, upcoming contract adjustments. Josh Allen's got to get paid. We're going to find out here in a couple weeks as we record this, what the cap is going to be. It looks probably between 180 and 85, maybe 190 at the most. Brandon Beane's got his work cut out for him. So does Sean McDermott. So I'm not going to ask you, well, don't you think that the next step is to make the Super Bowl? That's not the question. The question is, how open is the window right now for you, for them to get to the championship game, the big stage, to win the Super Bowl? How open is the window? Is it 3 to 5? Is it 5 to 7? Is it up to 10 years, which I think is ridiculous? How open is the Bills' window for a title right now?
I'm going to say it's wide open as long as they've got Josh Allen. Because he seems to me to be the key guy. If you look at all the teams that made the Final Four, to my recollection, they all had franchise quarterbacks. Mahomes, Allen, Rodgers, Brady. And Allen's not going anywhere. So I think that window's wide open. I'll go with the 3 to 7. It's wide open. And Brandon Beane, yeah, he's got tough decisions, but he's made most of the decisions he made have been great. I mean, the Diggs move, what a great move. Can he pull something off with T.J. Watt, who I think could really help this team? We'll see. And he's going to have to move some pieces around and adjust some contracts. But he's got the key piece in Allen. As long as you have that guy, you got a fighting chance. So I'm going to say that window is wide open. And, of course, each year is different. You got to put together, it's basically a whole new team. There's always roster turnover and changeover. So you have to have, that team had great chemistry this year. And Sean McDermott did a fabulous job. And it was a bit of an odd year. Well, not a bit of a hugely odd year with the whole pandemic, but somehow McDermott managed to keep that team together and on the same page. So I think the window's wide open. And, like you said, there's no guarantees, obviously, because you don't know what's going to happen the next season. You'd like to think that the next step, and to quote Sean McDermott, it's all a process. It is. He's right. You'd like to think the next step in the process is getting to that final game and winning it. But, listen, if it weren't for Josh Allen, the Bills don't beat the Colts. In the first game of the playoffs. And unfortunately for Frank Reich, because a couple of the decisions that he made just didn't work out. And then, the Bills found a way to beat the Ravens. Well, if they all these teams in the playoffs are really good, so you're going to need all the calls to go your way, the bounces to go your ways. You're going to have to play really well to beat them. Can they do that again next year? Well, I think they can, but just because I think so doesn't mean it'll happen, because those other teams are going to come back restructured and reshaped too. But I do think the window is wide open, and it largely starts with the fact that Josh Allen made a gigantic leap forward in year number 3, and I think there's still a lot more in that young man. I just think he's got a lot left to grow into, and he will continue to get better, which bodes well for the Bills.
Our guest here on the Bills Brawl is Stu Boyar, WGRZ-TV, longtime TV personality covering the Bills in Western New York. And, Stu, the TV world it is such a grind. I mean, you are some days, Bills game day, you're there really early in the morning. You're getting ready for some things. You're doing research and pregame, and then you watch the game, you analyze the game, you put your content together, you do multiple hits, you do the night sportscast, whatever the case may be. And I wouldn't pretend to know your schedule A to Z, but I interned at Channel 9 in Syracuse, and I've been around TV my whole life in media, just seeing it and knowing the grind that media is in general anyway. And then on top of that, for me, working in sales and marketing, it's a grind. Every day you're grinding through, you're getting through. While you did love it, and I know that you are so thankful for the career you had and what you saw and the people you worked with, when the grind got really, really tough, how did you get through those days?
Good question, Mike. You just did it. You just did it because you had to. I don't really know how to answer that question, because for the most part, it was fun. It was interesting. It was tiring. A story is a story, and you would just cover whatever story you had, and you would just push through if you got tired. That's the only thing I can say. You just push through. I think that's what a lot of media people do. I will tell you this about having been retired. What a joy to sit and watch NFL games when the Bills are good.
Yeah.
And because I could actually be a fan, and it was like, wow, this is great.
Yeah.
And you know what, Mike? I'll be very happy, obviously, for all the other reasons that are far more important than the one I'm going to give you when the pandemic ends. But when the pandemic ends, I want television to go back to being television, where you have professional photographers and editors.
Yeah.
Because I hate the looks of Zoom calls. They look terrible. They sound terrible. I know that technology's come a long way, but I want photographers who can frame a shot properly, keep a shot in focus, and light a shot properly.
No kidding.
So I'll be happy for the return of TV, which is obviously way down the list of priorities. Obviously, I want people to be healthy and the pandemic to end. But the answer to your question is you just find a way to push through, because that's what you do, and it's what you've done from the moment you got into the industry.
You know, it's incredible to think about the amount of, you know, games and players you saw and opponents of the Bills, even week to week. I mean, just that era of football, the 90s, and then into, obviously, the drought, which was brutal for everyone. But did you have a favorite player you covered during the run in the 90s? Or even just in your career? You know, if you can't pick one, maybe a few?
Oh, boy. Thurman Thomas is at the top of my list.
Yeah.
Because he's a great guy. I like Thurman. I mean, all those guys. You know, Jim Kelly's a good guy, too. So I don't know those guys really well. It was just a professional relationship. And you know, now you're going back a long time, too, and we're all different because we were all much younger and we all had many different priorities. But those are two of my top guys on the football side. And I like Cornelius Bennett, too. I mean, Steve Tasker, I'll tell you could always count on Steve for an insightful thought. And Kent Hall. And I think we all had a pretty good idea that once Steve Tasker got done playing football, he was going to have a great career in broadcasting, because his answers were so good and so concise and was so well thought out. I had way too many favorites to name. It was just an incredible era.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed Marv Levy, too, all of them. I can't think of anybody I really didn't like.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, you know, it was just fun. And now they have another great group where, like, Deion Dawkins is a riot. He's a very interesting character. And he's written a couple of gorgeous letters in the Players Tribune to Bills fans, so that he speaks from the heart. And I always respect when people do that. And you know, I've been so impressed with Josh Allen. I can't think of anything for anyone to not like about him. You know, in the Thanksgiving Day game last season, the season before this one, where he on a 4th and 1, where he goes on a quarterback sneak and he tosses the defensive lineman to the ground. I like that.
Yeah.
And what I also like about this team is, you know, back in the day, if Jim Kelly took a cheap shot, all those guys would rally to his defense. And so will these guys for Josh Allen, because they all know he's their bread and butter. He is the unquestioned leader, and they all rally around him. And those are the kind of things you can't put a price tag on. So to answer your question, I've had tons of favorites, way too many to name, and I hope I didn't leave anybody out. You know, I've had tons of favorites on the hockey side, too, but since we're talking Bills, way too many of them to name. It was just a fun time for me, you know, because I came to Buffalo when I was 30 and spent 35 years at Channel 2, and I've got a lifetime of great, great memories, and the Bills are a big part of all that.
You know, you just mentioned that amount of time at one place. I just, it's awfully hard for me to wrap my head around that, because in 18 years, I worked for 3 different radio conglomerates in 2 different markets. I held probably between, I don't know, 8 to 12 just media jobs, freelance, full-time, whatever, probably 8 to 12 different hats that I wore in and around all of them. And now I'm obviously doing my own thing, as you know.
And congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. But, like, you know, you and like Ron Curtis of my childhood at CBS, and Ted Namey, who I worked with at 93Q for several years, and some other folks, you guys are and gals are in a special category, man. I mean, to be at one place that long is, especially today with everything that changes and all the media things we have now, where a kid in high school, for crying out loud, there's 9, 10, 12, 15-year-olds doing their own podcasts right now, and they're flourishing. Their ratings are burying mine, but that's where, that's the industry now. You just kind of have to accept it if you're in it. But do you think about that often? Like, holy cow, that's a big deal for me. I mean, you're like the one player, one team kind of guy for 20 some odd years as an athlete, but then you tack on all those extras in TV. It's amazing, Stu.
Well, thank you, Mike. I think I was very fortunate. I survived a whole bunch of management changes. For the most part, I came to work, did whatever I was asked, did my thing, and went home. And, I can't say that there weren't ups and downs in all those 35 years, because there were some very high highs and some very low lows. But I was fortunate that I survived. When I came to Channel 2, I was hired as a unique critter, which is someone who did a little bit of everything. Broadcasting, writing, editing, reporting, shooting, editing, producing, you name it. So I came in as for lack of a better way to put it, a jack of a number of trades and maybe not a master of any of them. But I was able to survive. I had certain confrontations with numerous people, some that I'm not proud of, some I remain good friends with to this day, because at some point you got to take a stand and stand up for yourself. Yeah. But do I think about it? I think I had a great time. I think I was very fortunate. I think I worked hard. I caught a few breaks here and there. But I don't think about it that much. I just am very grateful that I had all the opportunities that I had to cover the stories I covered, to meet the people that I met, and for the most part, remain healthy. So I don't think about it that much. It was just me. I set out to have a career, and I was fortunate to have a great career, and it just happened to be the place where I came to and was able to make a home and raise a family in an area that I absolutely love. So I just consider myself very fortunate. Yeah, I put in the hard work in that, but I had some good fortune, and I don't think about it too much other than to say how grateful that I really am that it happened the way it did.
Couple more for Stu Boyar, the longtime TV personality, Buffalo Bills insider reporter, WGRZ-TV. What was your welcome to TV moment, as a professional? You get out of school at early days. Mike Tirico, I remember when he was at CBS, I think, locally, WTVH, and he was doing a hit, I think, he was over at Coyne Field or somewhere. He was doing a lacrosse hit, I believe. And I think he had puked on camera, and he wasn't sure he was live on TV. I would have to look it up to be sure. I'm kind of paraphrasing the situation, but he had that. You hear other horror stories of guys who become legends in TV. You hear great stories, from the likes of Sports Center anchors, and you hear radio national hosts who had their slip ups in the beginning. Did you have a welcome to TV moment? Do you remember one?
Well. By the way, I had a great conversation with Mike Tirico one year when I was covering the Empire State games when he was working at Channel 5 in Syracuse.
He's awesome.
I sat down and talked to him for about an hour. And he, I believe, was roommates at Syracuse with Paul Peck, who worked at Channel 4 here in Buffalo for a long time. Yeah. So, and at that time, I didn't know that had happened. But Mike's a really good dude. And I had a couple of welcome to TV moments. My first I was on Channel 10 in Rochester, WHEC, and it was a Friday night. The Phoenix Suns and Boston Celtics had played a triple overtime game. It was the night I was going to make my debut. We didn't get on the air until about 1 o'clock in the morning, because CBS had actually carried the game and it was live. Well, they came to me and I started doing the sports. I started talking, and about 10 seconds later, one of the people, I think it might have been the late Mark Wolf, who was the main anchor, pointed at me and said, "You don't have your microphone on." So I picked up the microphone and put it on, and went right in, kept right on going as though nothing had happened. And that was my first welcome to TV moment. And one of my other ones was also, believe it or not, at Channel 10 in Rochester, WHEC, when I was part-time. I was doing a 6 o'clock Saturday sports show.
Wow.
And my nose started to bleed.
Oh, no. Oh. I've had that happen as a talk show host on radio, and it's just... Oh.
It's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And it just so happened just as we were like fading to black. So I don't know if anybody ever saw it, but I knew it. And it was like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. And I'm sure I had many here at Channel 2 in Buffalo. I'm going to have to think of them like, welcome to TV moment. Well, you know, when you're a photographer, okay, I'll think of a couple. You got time for a couple?
Of course I do.
Okay. When I first came to Buffalo at WGRZ, we were using something called the M format. It was a Panasonic brand, and all the people, the photographers, the chief photographer, and the staff at Channel 2 had told the management at that time, don't get this stuff. Go with Betacam. Well, of course, in their infinite wisdom, to save a few bucks, the management at that time decided to go with M1. So we would put all these great packages together, and when they would go on the air, they would have all these horrible red lines on them, so they couldn't air. And it just got very, very frustrating. And that was a kind of a welcome to TV. You know, you got to remember, it's the business, and management's always going to do what it can to reduce costs.
Sure.
That's a generic one.
Heard that one before.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
Oh, we can't give you another $1 per hour to host this show, man. Sorry.
That's right. I'm sure you've heard that in many different ways.
Just a few. I could write a book on it.
I'm sure I'll look forward to that. Here's another one for you. Years ago, when the Sabres were in the playoffs in Boston, Mike DeGeorge and I were covering the Sabres. And we were crossing a street in Boston, but because of the M1 format that we had to carry, instead of just a Betacam, we had to carry like a 3/4-inch deck because we had to convert our video before we could feed it back. Yeah. So we had a tripod, an extra deck. We had all kinds of equipment. And as we're crossing the street in Boston, Ted Sater, who was the Sabres coach at the time, looks at us and says, "Hey guys, you need some help?" And we said, "Oh, no, thank you." But you talk about a horrible moment. You know, you're trying to cover this team, and here's the head coach offering to help you get your gear across the street.
Oh man.
It was terrible.
See, these are some of the things that people like these youngins today, they have no idea. You know.
Well, you know, I often wondered, now you were talking about the Bills of the 90s. Can you imagine if social media and the internet had existed when that team was playing?
Oh, baby. Yeah. I mean, you know, the hashtag Bills Mafia, and it's gotten so big with Dell and the crew in Western New York and all that. But, you know, you go to 4 straight Super Bowls, you know, you become, I think, long-term, I think that era is going to be, I mean, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it right now as I've gotten older and I look back, and it was such a framework for me as a sports fan as a kid. And you know, still, a lot of people come up to me today and they ask me, they're like, "Man, would you do it again? Would you do 4 in a row?" And I'm like, Of course. 4 in a row, maybe not 4, but yeah, I probably would. You know why? Because 5 to 7 years of my life, Stu, they were one of the top 2 teams, top 3 or 4, 5 teams at most. You know, even before the Super Bowl years, they were starting to amp up towards that. And then they went to 4 in a row. And every Sunday you felt like they were going to win. And you could project 12-4, 13-3, home field advantage, Kelly to Reed touchdown, Thomas, Bruce Smith, best player in the NFL on defense for a long time of that. They were one of the best couple teams in the NFL for a 5 to 7 year stretch, regardless of losing 4 in a row. And that week to week, that lead up every week, that feeling, that playoff feeling, winning every week until the big game, that was a hell of a time to be alive.
It was spectacular. And you had a different feeling each week that someone somewhere was going to do something spectacular.
Yeah.
And you know what? They did.
Every single week.
Amazing.
And Stu, they beat teams in the NFC. I mean, you're talking about the era with Montana and those 49er, the Kelly Young games, the Giant games, even regular season, non-Super Bowl, the NFC powerhouses, Marino and the Dolphins, and that Raiders team they beat 51-3 that was loaded. They beat Montana as a Chief. You know, the regular season games were wild. They were playoff-esque every week as well.
Well, the one Super Bowl that I really wanted to see that never happened was because the Giants blocked the punt, beat the 49ers, I think. and that's how they got to the Super Bowl. And that was, of course, the first Super Bowl that the Bills lost to the Giants, if I remember correctly.
Super Bowl 25,
That should have been the 49ers, but the Giants pulled an upset. And the Bills had just played the Giants a few weeks before. Kelly and Will Wolford had gotten hurt in that game.
Right.
And, of course, Jeff Hostetler played, and Hostetler makes the play of the game because how does he not fumble that ball when Bruce Smith hammers his hands in the end zone?
Oh, man.
And if that's a fumble and the Bills fall on it, touchdown, game over. But like you said, it was a riot. It was fun. And this team is positioned to do something similar, with the exception of they'll hopefully have a chance to win one or two or three. Which
I'm good with one. Let's just start with one. We're good.
That's right. You do have to start with one.
Yeah.
And they haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
So, but yes, that era, fabulous, unforgettable. And if you didn't live through it, it's hard for people to realize what it was like.
No doubt. Yeah, in that game, by the way, that NFC title game, it was 15-13 Giants. And that was George Seifert as head coach. He had taken over recently with Bill Walsh. And that was the Matt Barr 5 field goal game for the Giants, and just a defensive stalwart effort by the Giants and in that terrific D. And then, of course, Bill Belichick and company got the Bills in the Super Bowl. Final thing for you here. I want to play a little game of quick hits. It's me giving you a couple of really, really quick questions, and you give me the first thing that comes to mind as an answer. You ready to go?
Sure. I love this stuff.
Favorite Buffalo Bills Super Bowl team? Out of the 4, which one was your favorite?
First one.
Yeah, me too. Best chicken wing spot for Stu Boyar in Buffalo is what?
Lenova barbecued wings.
Really? I haven't tried that one. I'm dying to try the Bar Bill. People say great things about. I love Elmo's. I love Gabriel's Gate, but I got to get back out there and try a few more.
Well, truthfully, Mike, I'm at the point now where I shouldn't be eating any chicken wings. And I don't have them very often, so they're a special treat. But all those places you mentioned, Gabe's Gate, Elmo's, they all have good wings. Show me a bad chicken wing. Is it
honestly
possible?
Right? Yeah. No, and I probably should slow down on the chicken wing thing as well, man. Trust me. We talked about favorites, Buffalo Bills when you covered. Give me the most interesting Sabre you ever covered.
Oh, you're making me think now. Most interesting. It's interesting the way that you phrase that.
It'd be just easy to say Hasek, right?
Well, I was going to say Dominic Hasek. He was interesting.
Yeah.
I really have to think about that. I guess I'll have to go with Hasek. But so many of these guys are so interesting in their own ways. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you a little quick story if you got time.
Sure.
The late, great Larry Felser was a master at getting information out of these guys. And one day, after a particular galling loss, he was in the Sabres locker room, and he went up to Rob Ray, and he said to him, "How do you get rid of that?" And I heard the question, and I never even thought about it. I also heard part of Rob's answer, and I think Rob does a great job for the Sabres on their TV broadcasts. And that stuck with me. So maybe I'll say Rob Ray just to be different. Rob Ray, to me, is a very fascinating guy. I think he's done a really good job on the Sabres broadcast. But in terms of purely the most interesting, it just might be Hasek. But there's so many. The whole Michael Pekka thing.
Oh, yeah.
He sat out a year was very interesting. They had a great Stanley Cup run in '99. Maybe I'll say Lindy Ruff, because there's one of the best guys you'll meet in or out of sports anywhere. I'll go with Lindy Ruff. How's that?
There's some good ones for sure. Favorite athletes growing up as a kid?
Willie Mays.
Oh, man.
Aaron, Roberto Clemente.
Oh, yeah.
Rocky Colavito. Jim Brown. Want me to keep going?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I just read Mays. I just read the 24 book by John Shea with Willie, and man, is it good. I just got done reading that one. What are you most proud of?
My wife and children, because family is one and 1A. I love my wife dearly. I'm very fortunate to have met her and married her. Our oldest daughter is an X-ray tech. Our youngest daughter is a graduate student working remotely from home at Drexel University.
Cool.
And there's nothing like it. It's, I thank God every day for the great experiences of a healthy, happy marriage and healthy, happy children. And I can just hope that continues for them for the rest of their lives, which is not a sporting answer to your question, but it is the truth.
That's awesome. Well, this was so fun. Stu Boyar, congratulations again. WGRZ-TV, longtime career covering Buffalo sports, the Bills, the insider information. Your presence on camera has been terrific. Obviously, I've met you a couple times going back. I haven't seen you in forever, but I can't wait to see you again out there. And, proud to call you a friend more than anything. Thanks for stopping on here, the Bills Brawl, and we'll do it again, all right?
Mike, thank you very much for having me on. I greatly appreciate it. I look forward to doing it again anytime, and I do hope to see your smiling face in person whenever I get the chance, and you keep up the great work on the podcast.